Alright my friends, welcome to the video. Today we will be building this typing web app which is recreation of Typeracer website. If you have not used this website before, then go to the typeracer.com and check their typing functionality. That is what we will be creating here today. To create this project, we will use React, TypeScript, Zustand for the state management, Tailwind for the styling. So I think this is the one of the best project for learning React and its state management. Once the race is over, we will also get the result of the race, such as typing speed, accuracy, time, and the list of mistake words. We can also start the new race. We are going to have lots of fun building this project. So without further delay, let's start. Here in the VS Code, you can see I already set up the React for our project. I also installed Tailwind to our project and extended some colors to the Tailwind system so that we can use these colors later in the project. So pause the video and copy these color codes if you want to exactly match my UI design. This project is also open in my Chrome browser using localhost server. Currently, this page has only this Typeracer text on it. This project is kind of intermediate level project, so I am assuming that everyone watching knows how to set up React and installed Tailwind to the project. However, if you need help to do this, please check my video on how to set up a React project. For this video, this will be our starting point, and we will continue from here. So let's start by removing this line of code. Here I want to add one div container. Inside this div container, I want to add few components. The first one will be race on component, and this component will include the timer for our race and the text that we have in the top. Okay. And the next component I want to add here is race track, and this race track will include our car and car animation. Okay, and finally the most important component, the typing area. And before we go on and add these components, let's first style this container. Class name busy light gray, display grid, justify center, item start, padding top of 20, and finally mean height of screen. Okay, and then on this div container, let's say class name, and this will be width of 800 px. Okay, and padding 10, and then space y of 6. Okay, and rounded md busy white, and finally drop shadow of xl, and let's save it. Now we need to create these components. Okay, so let's open the file explorer, and within this source folder we will create another folder, component, and in this component folder we will create this race on.tsx file. Let me quickly create a function for this component, race on. Okay, and let's save it. And similarly, I will create other two components also. Now that I already created all these components that we need, let's close this explorer and go to the app.tsx file, where we need to import all of these components. Now let's go to check this on the Chrome browser. So this is what we have so far. Now here in this typing area component, let's remove this text and add a div over here with the p tag in it, and here goes the text to be typed. Okay, and let's add another div over here with the input tag in it, that is the type of text. And let's style this wrapper div, and let's say class name and bg lighter gray space y of, let me give it a 4. Okay, and padding x 2, padding y 5, and then border gray 300, and rounded md. Okay, after that I want to style the text, and the text size will be XL, font of mono, and then finally maybe font of light. And let's save it and let's check it on our browser. So this is what we have so far. This input element will handle lots of logic of our app. So let's create a separate component to return this input. So open an Explorer and create a file named text input. Now create a function and return the input. Now let me give some style to this input. Class name, and this will be with full border gray of 200, and rounded SM. After that I want to provide it with some padding, and the padding will be 2px. Text large, and when focus outline none, and when focus I want border to be black. Okay, let's save it. Now let's go to this typing area component and replace this input with our new component, that is text input. Now we need to import this one. Okay, after that let's save it and let's go to the Chrome browser to check. So this is what we have so far. Now back to this text input component. Here I want to use the use state hook. So const typed set type and use state empty string. Okay, so let's import this use state, and here in this input element we can say value typed, and then on change I want to run a function to set the type to this event target value. Okay, now we can use the use effect hook and something like this, and console.log typed. Okay, and here whenever this typed is changed I want to run this use effect and import this use effect too. And few things I want to do here is when this page is load, I want this input always to be autofocus. Okay, the next thing I want to do here is on paste I want to say prevent default. That means user will be restricted from copying and pasting to this input. Okay, now save it and let's check it in our browser. So here I have already opened the console, so you do the same, and whenever I type here you can see it is updated there. And the other thing is, if I copy something from here and if I want to paste it, I cannot do that. With the current setup, if we make any changes in this input, this code inside the use effect will run. So any logic that depends on the value of this input will goes over here. Let's start with the simple logic. If you check in the browser right now, this input accepts the space at the beginning, but we do not want this. So let's go to the code and fix it. So we can remove this console.log from here now, and we can say if this typed is equals to space, then we want to set type to empty string, and we can simply return from here. Okay, and if we save it and go to the browser again, you can see this input will not accept the space at the beginning. Before we start adding more logic over here, this text input component need to get access of this text that we need to type. And here I see I misspelled this code, so let me just correct that first, and let me actually copy this and remove this from here, and let me say text over here, and this text we need to create here as a const text equals to, and just paste that text that we want to type. And please do not mind this cheap code over here. Okay, this is not the way to do it, but for now I just want to focus on this text input, and we will change this code later when we start working on this state management. Okay, so here I want to pass this text as a prop, so text equal to text. Okay, let's save it and go to this text input component. Now we need to add text prop to this component, so we can say text, and this text will be type of string. When typing in this input, we are not going to type all of this text at once, right? Actually, we are going to type one word at a time. So we need to break this text to the individual words, and that we can do here by using string split method. So I can say const words and text dot split by the space. Okay, now this will give us the array of string. Okay, and this string array will include all the words from this text. Okay, and now I want to get the total word also from here. So total words equals to words dot length. In this way, if any state changes in this text input component, these two lines of code will run again and recalculated. However, the value of these will not change unless the value of this text is changed. So to prevent from this unnecessary recalculation, the best approach here will be to use the use memo hook. So here we can say const text info equals to use memo, and this use memo will take a function and a dependency. Okay, and the dependency will be this text, and here I want to grab these two lines of code and put it inside this function, and this will also return this word and total word. Now we need to import this use memo, and we will use the JavaScript way destructuring here, and we can say word and total word. So that way we will get these word and total words. And to make sure everything is working just fine, we will say console.log, and we will say words and total words here. Okay, let's save it and let's go to the browser, and looks like it's already working. So if I type something, you can see we get the array of all the words that is in this text, and the total word is 7. So this is working as we want. Now the idea is to type the first word of this array, and once we correctly typed it, move to the next word until we type the final word of the array. So here we will add the another state to track the index number of the word that we are currently typing. So here add const index and set index equal to use state, and the initial value is 0. Now remove this line of code, and here I will say const current word equals to word at the current index number. And we want to update this index when we typed all the characters of this current word, and at the end we add the space. To add this logic, we will come over here and say if typed at the index of this current word dot length, if this is equals to space, then we will set typed to empty string, so that when we start typing the next word, the input will be empty. Okay, now we can say set index, we will get the prep value and update this prep value by adding 1. Okay, now I can just return. Okay, and before we add more logic, we want to check what we did here. Okay, but first of all I want to add one console.log index. Okay, now let's save it and let's go to the browser to see if this is working or not. Here you can see right now the index value is 0, and now if I type this first word of the text here and press the space at the end, then you can see the index value is updated. Okay, let me get this current word also in our console. Now you can see this goes is the next word. Okay, and we need to type that word. So if I type goes and press space, then you can see the current word now is the. That means we need to type the over here. If I type something random over here and press space, this doesn't work. Okay, however, if the length of the text that I typed here and the length of the text, that means the current word, is matched, even the word is doesn't match, if I press the space, this index is updated. This is because we do not have any error handling system right now in our code. So now next thing we need to do is, whenever we type something wrong, we do not want this index to be updated. Okay, so we need to do that. So let's go to our code editor and add that functionality. Back to this text input component, here we need to add another state to handle our error. So here we will say const error set error, and this will be equals to use state, and this use state error will be typing error. Okay, now we need to create this typing error. So let's go to the top here and we will say typing error equals to, now this typing error will have the state. Let's say state is boolean for now, and that means when the state is false, we do not have any error, and when the state is true, we have some error. And when the state is false, that's fine, there is no error and we need no more information. But when the state is true, we also need the information of the index number of this current word at which we start typing incorrectly. Okay, so let me say this state is false, and here this type can be either state false or state true. Okay, and we also need the information at on this state true, that will be number type. Okay, now here we can say the initial value of the our error is state false. Okay, now save it. So now here we will check for error. So if error dot state is true, then return. Only thing that we want to do here is to check if typist has already cleared the error or not, and that we can do by saying if error dot at is greater or equals to typed dot length, and if this is true, then we want to say set error to state false. This condition code can get little bit confusing, so let me explain with the example. So let's say the current word that we need to type is this one, and if I type yes e and then I mistype it and make a mistake or error, then the index of this word at which we make the error is 0, 1 and 2. So error dot at will be 2 at this point, but the length of this typed word is 3. Now if I want to correct this mistake, I need to remove this q. Now the type dot length is 2. So right now error dot at is equals to type dot length. So here now we know that when error dot at is greater or equals to type dot length, there will be no error. So we set the error to the state false, and this type dot length I will be using in multiple places. So the best way to do that is, let me make a const value over here called typed length, and this will be equals to type dot length. Now I can replace this type dot length with this typed length. Okay, now we need to change the error dot state when we mistype. For that we can come over here, let me give some space over here, and after this if statement over here, let me say if we typed the last character, so this gives us the last character that we type. If this is not equals to the current word at the same index number, then that means we type the something wrong characters. Okay, that time I want to set error, and the state will be true, and the at will be type dot length -1. At this index we did something wrong typing, right? Okay, now save it. Now let's test all the logic that we have so far. So if I type correctly the word and then press space, we go to the next word. But if I type something wrong and press space, we do not go to the next word. Okay, but if I correct it and press space, you can see we move to the next word. So this is working as we want, and when we reach to the last word and press space, we get the error. Okay, so we need to fix this also. Here we will add the logic to add the last word. The order of these logic are also very important, as I cannot run this logic unless there is no error in our typing. So this error check logic must come before this piece of code. Okay, so please follow the order of logic as I am doing here. When we reach to the last word, we do not want to add this space at the end to complete the rest. When we type the last character of the last word correctly, we want the rest to be over. And we will reach to the last word if index equals to total word minus 1, and if current word dot length minus 1 equals to typed current word dot length minus 1. This means we correctly type the last character of last word. Now by this point our rest should be over, right? So at last I want to set type to empty string so that the input will be empty, and set index, I will get the pre value and add 1 to it. After that finally I will return from here. After this code execute, the index will be equal to total words, and this might give us a error because here at the top we are trying to access this word array at the number of this index, and if the index is greater than the word's length, then it will give us an error. So here, to prevent that, we will say if index is greater or equals to total word, just return. Now I want to test all this code, but first let me remove this code, and here when we complete our rests over here, I want to say console dot log, and let me say race is complete. Okay, something like that. Let's save it and let's go to the browser to check if everything is working. Here you can see if I type the word correctly, we move to the next word, and if I do something mistake, I cannot move to the next word. I need to first fix the error and type it again, right? And if I completely type everything, you can see here it says race is complete. So basically our core typing logic is complete. The main purpose of this text input component is to return this input element, but we added lots of logic in this component. We created like 3 state over here. We are using use effect, and we write all the logic related to typing over here in this component, even though we are just using this type and set type state in this input element. So we will create a hook to separate this logic from this UI component. So open the Explorer, and inside this source folder, I want to create a new folder called hooks, and inside this folder, I want to create a file name, use typing input.tsx. Okay, and let me create a function for this component, use typing input. Okay, and this will return object. Now from this text input, from this point of code to up to this point, we need to select, we will cut it and bring back over here, and we will paste it. Okay, now I see we need to access this text, so that text we will get from the here text, and this text will be type string. We need to import this use memo, and we need to import this use state, and we need to import this use effect. Okay, and we need to get this typing error type that we have it over here. Okay, let me grab this from up to this point, cut it, we do not need that anymore here, and we will put it over here. Okay, Just paste it. Now we will have this typing error also. What else we need? Let me check. And from here, let me just remove this line of code, and then this input need this type and set type, right? So here at the return we will say typed and set typed. Okay, now let me save this, and up here I will say const equals to use typing text, and I will provide this text, and from this use typing text I need typed and set type. Now this should work just fine. Let me save this too. Only thing is, when this race is complete, I want this input to be disabled. Okay, and we know the race is complete when this index is greater than the total word or equals to total word. Okay, so here I want to create another const value race complete. Okay, and this will not be the function. Actually I want to say this will be equals to index greater or equals to total word. So if this condition is true, then we know that the race is complete. Okay, and I want to return that race complete over here, and let's save it. Now I want to access this race complete also. So here race complete. Okay, now here I will say if disabled, and if race complete is true, then I want to disable this input, otherwise do not disable, right? That's what it means. And let's save it and let's test it. So let's do the test typing to see if everything is working. And you can see after I complete the race, the input is now disabled. That means our code is working just fine, and we successfully complete the separation of the logic from text input component UI. Now that we have completed the most important part of our project, that is creating the core logic of our typing functionality, let's wait a second here for a quick review of our code, so that when our project gets bigger, it will not be that confusing. So what is happening here is, whenever anything is changed in this input, the code inside this use effect hook will run. And here we have these 4 if statement, roughly about 30 line of code. This is handling all of our typing logics. This if conditions checks if we had an error in typing or not, and if there was an error, did the typist clear the error or not. This code is here to check if the typing is complete or not. So if these two conditions are true, then the typing should be over. We need this code to make sure we type each word at a time. Once we correctly type one word, then only we move to the next word. Finally, if none of the above condition is true, we will check for any typing error. That's all we need to build our functional typing app. Any logic or code that we will add here from now on will mostly related to user experience. For example, starting the timer, getting result, and so on. But our core typing functionality is done. Even I did not think that it would be this easy to build this app before I started. Now, what's next? If we want to make our app scalable and manageable, now it is time to add the state management solution to our app. So we need to use the state management because we have all the typing logic code in this use typing input hook. and this text input component is using this use typing input hook and getting the access of this race complete state. But we also need this race complete state in this app component so that when the race is over, we can show the result. So any state that are shared by the multiple component, we want to manage it by a state management solution that simplifies the state management for us. And we are going to use Zustand as our state management, which is very simple and easy to use. So open your terminal and install Zustand. Now open your Explorer, and in this source folder we want to create a new folder that will be called store or stores, and then we want to create a new file called use typing store.ts. okay, now in this use typing store we need to import create from Zustand. Okay, and we need to export const use typing store and create this set, but we are using TypeScript, so we need to pass here angle bracket that will define the type of our store, that will be typing store. And for some reason when we are using TypeScript we need to give this brackets over here. Okay, and here we are returning this object, and we need to create type this typing store, something like this. Okay, the first property that I want to add here is this text. Right now this text has some hard-coded string value, but from now on I want to get this text value from this store, and when we start the new race we want to get the new text for us to type. Okay, so let's go to the this type and say text string. Okay, and over here we will say text, let's say text is an empty string for now. And other thing is we are not going to create any database or work with any database for this project. So here I want to create an array of string from which we will get the random value for this text. Okay, so open the Explorer, and in this asset folder let me create a one folder data, and in this data I want to create a file text data.ts, and here I want to say export default and paste your array. Okay, and you just create a array with the text that you want to type. Okay, and if you are like me you can use ChatGPT to generate this array. Okay, and let's save it, and let's go back to this use typing store. Now we can import that text data over here. So import text data over here, and then we can use that over here text data. Let's say we want to get the data from 0 index, so first data of the array. Okay, if we do something like this, every time we start our app we will get the same text to type. Okay, so to make it random we can change this number to the random number from the value between 0 to the length of this text data array. Okay, so the way to do that is math.floor, and I got the suggestion, so this is the code we need to do here. Okay, so let's save it. Now let's open this typing area component and replace this text with our use typing store and from there we will get this state.txt. Okay, now if I save it and go to the browser, then if we have done everything correctly, every time we refresh, the text should be different. Okay, so yes, we get the different text here. Let me do it one more time. So we are getting different text every time we refresh. Okay, another thing is we are still in development process. To test our feature, we might need to type all of these multiple times. But if I start typing all of these, it will take a lot of time and it will not be that efficient for the development process. So for the development period, I will change the code in a such a way that when I type like 4 or 5 words, the rest should be over. To do that, we will manipulate this text in a way that we will get only 5 words out of it. Okay, so we need to first split it and then slice it from 0 to 5 index. Okay, and then join it again. Okay, and if I save it, we can go and check in the browser. You can see we have only 5 words over here, and this will be very helpful during our testing. And at the end, when we finish all the testing and developing our app, we will remove that code from there. So we will get all of the text. Okay. Right now in our app, we do not have a way to start a new race. So let's add this feature now. First, we will add a new property here called race completed, and this will be Boolean type. Okay, and then here we will say the initial value of this race completed will be false. Okay, and let's save this file and let's go to this app.tsx file. Now here we will get this race completed state from Zustand store by saying use typing store, and from this store we will get the state, and from the state we can get this race complete state. Okay, now we want to conditionally render this typing area component by saying if the race is not completed, then we want to render this typing area, otherwise we want the result component. Okay, that we are going to create now. Okay, so basically if race is not complete, we are still in typing mode, otherwise we want to show the result, and this result component will have one button from which we can start a new race. Okay, so let's create this result component. Open the Explorer and inside this component folder create a new file that will be called result.tsx. Okay, now here create a function result, and then here we will have a div, and in this div we will have a button. Okay, and here it will say new race, and let me just style this button a little bit. So we can say class name, and this will be bg green a. Okay, and hover will be bg green b, and then padding x of 8, padding y of 2, and text white, then rounded lg. Okay, let's save it. Okay, and let's go back to this app tsx, and here let me import this result. Okay, now save it, and we need to go back to our store. Here the race complete value is false. Now we need to add few methods over here so that we can change the value of race complete as we need. Okay, So the first method that we want to add here is race over, and this will be a function, and then start new race, and this will be also function. And here when the race is over, then we want to set the race complete value to true. Okay, and when we start the new race, we want to set the text. Okay, and we will get the new text, and we are doing the same code from here. Okay, it's the same thing, but we will get the new text for our new race. And then we want to set the race complete value to false when we start the new race. Okay, now let's save it and open this use typing input hook. Here you can see our race will be over at this point, right? So remove this code now, and we will run that race over function over here. Okay, so we can say use typing store, and from this store I want to get a state of this race over. Now when this race over is called, you can see we will set the race complete to true. Okay, so let's save it. Now let's open this result.tsx file. When I click this button, now this start new race function should run. So here I will say on click use typing store, and from here we will get this start new race. Okay, now let's save it and let's test it in our browser. So if everything is right, then when I finish typing this, we will get the button from that result. Okay, so here let me type. So you can see we got this button after we complete typing. Now if I click this button, we get the new race with the new text. Okay, so this is what we wanted. Okay, here in this use typing store, we have used this line of code twice, over there and here, and this is bothering me a lot. And if you remember, we need to remove this part of the code after we are done with the testing of our app. Now I have to remember to remove this code from two places, right? And this is not a good programming practice. So let me create a separate helper function to get this text. So open Explorer, and inside this source folder, create a new folder called utils, and here create a new file called gettext.ts, and we will say here export default, and we will create a function. Okay, now let's go to this store, and we will grab this line of text code and bring it over here. Now this function will take an array that will be string array type, and this will return the string. Now let's change this text data to array, and we will return this. Okay, and let me do one more thing here. So I will say const index equals to, and I will separate this line of code and bring it over here. Okay, and now I can pass index over here. So let's save it. Now I can import this function over here, import get text from this util folder, and I can use that function over here, get text, and pass this text data. Similarly, I can do the same thing over here and say get text and pass this text data and save it. Now this will not change anything in our app. Our app will remain the same, but this is just the good practice to follow. Okay, and just remember to remove this piece of code later after you finish testing. Okay, the next feature that I want to add here is the marking of these character. So right now we do not have any way to know what word or character we need to type next. So we will add a feature in our app that will mark our correctly and incorrectly typed characters. Okay, so that is what we want to do next. So let's do it. Here in this typing area component, we have this paragraph that has the text that we need to type. Now I will create a separate component to render this paragraph. So we will create a component called text to be typed. Okay, and this component will take text prop and we will pass this text. Now let's create that component. Now create a function text to be typed, and this will take a text and this will be type string, and here I will render a p tag and this has a text in it. Now we need to wrap each and every character of this text in a span tag so that we can style each character separately. Okay, so let's do that. First we need to split this text and run map function on it. Okay, from this map function we will get the character and the index, and we will return span tag inside it, and in each span we will add this characters. Okay, and for the key let me say characters plus I so that we get the unique key. Okay, I think that's all I need to do here for now. Let me just save it. Let's go to this typing area component and we need to import this, and let's save this too. Now if you go to the browser, okay, you have the span wrapping each of our characters in the text. Okay, something like this. Okay, this is what we want. To mark these character correct, we need to have two pieces of information. The first one is the number of correctly typed character, and the second one is total character typed. Okay, so for example, let's say this correctly typed character is 10 for now. That means the beginning 10 characters of this text is correctly typed. So from index number 0 to 9, that makes total 10 characters, we have to mark this character as correctly typed by setting the style of this span to text color green. Okay, now if this total character type is, let's say, 10, that means we have no error in our typing, as our correctly typed is also 10 and total character typed is also 10. But if let's say it is 12, that means we know we have two character we typed error. Okay, so the index number 10 and the index number 11 character, we have to mark it as a error by setting the style of this span to background color red. Okay, so this is the logic that we are going to implement here. So let's do it. First we will create a state to track these two values. Okay, so let me cut it, and here we will say const mark set mark. This will be use state, and the initial value of the use state will be that object, and the initial value of this correctly typed will be 0, and total character type will be also 0. Okay, Now we need to import this use state. After that, I want to add some logic before this return in this function. So let me move this one to the next line, and here I will say return, and I need to wrap this return value over here with these curly brackets. Okay, so please do not get confused. I just added this and this curly bracket over here so that I can add some logic over here. So when we correctly type, we need to make the character text green, right? So here I will say const text color equals to, if the index is less than marked dot correctly typed, then I want the text color to be green 500. Otherwise I do not want to add anything, so empty string. Okay, now we will say similarly, if the error, we need to change the background color. So bg color equals to, if the index is greater or equals to mark dot correctly typed, and if the index is less than mark dot total character type, then I want the background to be red 300. Okay, similarly, if it's false, then empty string, right? Now I want to use these two value over here as a class name, and here I can provide these text color and background color. So let's save it. Now let's go to the browser to check it. So here you can see we have no marking in our text because the total character typed and correctly typed both are set to 0 as their initial value. So if we go to the code and let's say the total character typed is now 10 and all of these 10 characters is correctly typed, then we should have some marking in our text. So you can see here I have like green text color for these 10 characters at the beginning, marking it as a correctly typed. Okay, and we have no red marking because all of the characters are correctly typed. Now if I come back and change this to 14, now save it, and if we go check here, you can see we have 4 characters that has red background. Okay, marking it as a error in our typing. Okay, so this is how our marking functionality will work, and this is working as we want. Now we need to find the way to update this total character typed and correctly typed. Now we need to find the way to update this value as we type. Okay, but first I want to clean this code a little bit. So here you can see I'm using the logic inside this UI component, and this is not the good practice. So I want to separate this logic from UI, and that will help us make our code more readable. Okay, so here at the end I will create a function. Let's say const add mark, and this will be equals to a function, and in this function I have to pass a index, and index will be a number, and I want to pass the mark, and here is the type for mark. Okay, and this function will return string. Okay, now over here I want to copy all of these logic, remove from there and move it over here. Now I want to return this, remove from there, and let's say over here I want to return this one. Okay, now I can save it and use this add mark function over here. Add mark, and here I can pass index and mark and save it. Now this will not change anything in our code, but this is the good practice to follow. Now let's find the way to update these two values. So these two values need to be updated every time we make any changes in our input, and our all the logic for our input and typing is in this use typing input. Okay, so from this hook we can get the information about correctly typed and total character typed. But this mark is right now the local state, right? And updating its value from this hook and using it over here might be little bit difficult because of this reason. So the easier option will be to make this mark a global state by the help of this use typing store. Okay, and we will update its value on this hook and use it over here. Okay, so that is the idea. Now let's do it. So open this use typing store. Here in this type we want to add a property mark, and this mark will be type mark. Now let's create a type mark. So type mark equals to correctly typed number and total character type number. Now here we will say the initial value of the mark will be correctly typed 0 and total character type 0. Now here we need to add a method to update this mark value. Okay, we need to update this mark two different ways. Okay, so when we are typing correctly, then both of these value will be updated. But when we are typing incorrectly, only this total character type value will be updated, but the currently typed value will remain the same. Okay, so here I will add a method update correct mark. Okay, and this will be a function. And we also want to have a method update incorrect mark, and this will be also type function. And here both of this function will take a total character typed as a parameter, and this will be number type. Okay, now we need to add this action over here. Okay, so here I will say update correct mark, and this will take our total character typed, and here I have to set. Okay, let me just remove this red line so you can see it well. So let me do like this first. Okay, so when we update correct mark, we will get this, and we want to set the mark value, right? And mark will be now correct typed. This correctly typed value will be equals to total character type. This is coming from here, okay, from our parameter. And this total character type, this one will be also equal to this. So I do not have to write total character type equals to total character type, because just the basic JavaScript, the name is same, so I just can use like this. Okay, now here also I want to update this mark, but here first I need to get a state, current state of this store, and then I can set the mark. Okay, and the mark will be whatever we have the value of mark in the current state, and only this total character type will be updated, and whatever the value of this total character type we provide here from the parameter, that will be equals to this. Okay, so that's all I want to do here. Okay, so let's save it. Now that we have this mark state in our store, let's go to this text to be typed component and replace this local state with our store mark state. Okay, So this way you can get the mark state, and we have to import this one. Okay, now let me remove this line of code importing use state. Now another thing here is I have used this type for this mark over here, but I already created this mark type on this store here, right? So let me just export it and save it, and I can go here and replace this one with that mark. Okay, and this is coming from this store. Okay, now let's save it. Now to update this mark, we need to go to this use typing input. Here I want to get that action to update our mark. So here I will say const update correct mark, that will be equals to use typing store, and from this store I will get the state and update correct mark. Similarly, I want to get this update incorrect mark. Okay, and let's save it. If you remember, we need to pass this total character type in this function as a parameter. Now we need to find a way to count the total character we type. The one way can be using this index number. We increase this index number by 1 every time when we type a word correctly. So all the words in this word array that comes before the current index number are already been typed. So if we add all of those words length and add this type length, then we will get our total character type. And this type represent the characters that we currently have in our input element. Okay, so let's do that. So here in this use effect, below this line of code, I will say const total character typed equals to words, and we want to slice this word from 0 to current index number, and we want to join it. Okay, after we join it, we want to get the length of all the characters. In this length, we will add the index to it, and this index will represent the space we type. Okay, so in every word after that we type the space, right? So that is what we are getting from this index number. Okay, so after that we need to add this typed length. Okay, now this will give us the total character we type so far. Okay, now let's go to the end of all of this condition, and when none of this condition meet, we want to update correct mark. Okay, and we will pass this total character type, and here we are doing something wrong, right? So we need to update incorrect mark and pass this total character, and we also need to return if this is the case. Okay, now here at our error state, we also need to update our mark. So when we do this if statement check, this means there is no more error. So here I will say update correct mark and pass this total character type, and if this is a case, just return. Okay, and if that is not the case, we still have some error, so we need to update our error mark. So update incorrect mark over here and pass this total character type. So let's save it and let's go to check this in our browser. So let's start the testing. If I type correct character, you can see it is marked as a text green color. Okay, and if I start typing like mistype it, then you can see it is marked as a red background, and if I remove it, the marking is gone. And if I start typing it again, and you can see from the point we start mistyping, we get the red background, otherwise we get the text color green for the characters that we type correctly. Okay, so that is how it's supposed to work, and it is working just like we want. Okay, back to this use typing input hook, I would like to take you to this line of code where we calculated the number of total characters of already typed word. The value of this calculation does not change until the index number is changed. But we have this code here inside this use effect, so this is getting calculated every time we make changes in our input. Even this value does not change. Even though this works well, as it is not the big calculation to make, I still would like to show you the alternative method to get the total number of characters of the already typed word. So let's replace this part of the code with the state already typed words. Okay, and we need to create this state up here, const already typed word and set already typed word equals to use state and the initial value 0. Now here, when we completely type the word and press space, we need to say set already typed word. From here we will get the prep value, and to this prep value we will add typed length. Now let's save it. Now this should work as before. Okay, so let's go to the browser and test it. Now let's start the testing. So the marking functionality looks like it is working just fine. Now the next thing I want to add in our app is, you can see here this line, the cursor. We want to add the similar kind of cursor in this text. Whichever character we are typing next, we want that cursor to be in the front of that character. Okay, so let's add that functionality. Here we are in this text to be typed component. We use this add mark function to get the classes that style and mark our character, and here is that add mark function. So we already have the setup that we need to add that cursor. Now we just need to add a logic to add that cursor. So let's say at the beginning, before we start typing, we want the cursor to be in the front of first character, that is the character at the index number 0. And if we type one character correctly, then we want the cursor to move in front of the character that has the index number 1. So basically, if the index is equal to correctly typed, then in front of that index number character, we need to add a cursor. So here we will say const cursor equals to, if index is equals to mark dot correctly typed, then I want border left, okay, and border black. Otherwise we need a empty string, and let me add that cursor over here now. Okay, now if I save it and check in the browser, here now you can see we have one line there, looks like that cursor. Okay, so once we start typing correctly, it moves with that, right? Something like this. And if you have noticed or not, let me zoom in, and when I type correctly, these characters move a little bit because we didn't had this 1px of border before, so to make the space for it, it is moving little bit slightly. Okay, so we need to fix that also. Okay, now to prevent from that character movement, I will just move this border left from here to here. So now all of our character will have this border left 1px. So we already have a space, so it will stop the character movement. Now we simply say border transparent over here. Now let's save it and let's check in the browser if this fixed our issue or not. So if I type, you can see there is no movement. Now the another thing here is, you can see we have this cursor, but it does not looks like a cursor, because cursor need to have this animation, right? This blinking animation. Right now we do not have that animation, so I will add that animation and it will look like this cursor. Okay, to animate that cursor we will use the tailwind. So open this tailwind.config.js file, and here extend the keyframe, add a keyframe called cursor, and here at the keyframe 0% and 100%, we want the border color to be RGBA color, where we will have complete black color. Okay, and at the 50% we want the RGBA color black but completely transparent. Okay, now we need to extend animation. Okay, and you can do this in the CSS also if you are not using the tailwind. Okay, so here we will create a cursor animation, and this cursor animation will use this cursor keyframe for 1 second, for infinity time, and linear. Okay, simple. Save it. Now go to this text to be type component and replace this with the animate cursor. Okay, now save it. Now let's check it in the browser. So you can see this is blinking now and looks like a cursor. Now the next thing we need to do is, when we type something wrong, you can see this text character is getting red background, right? But we want this input also have this red background when we have error. So we do that next. Okay, we need to turn this input into red when we have a error, and we need to access somehow this error state. So you can see here this component is using this use typing input hook. So this use typing input hook has this error state, from where we can get this state false or true. So we can access this state and use that state to change the background of this input. Okay, so you got the idea. Now let's implement that in code. So I can get the error from this hook. Okay, now I will use JavaScript template string on here and replace actually this double quote with a backtick. Now I can use the logic here like this way. Okay, now I will say if we have a error, then we want the background to be red 300. Okay, otherwise I want background to be white. Okay, now save it. Now we need to get this error from here. Okay, so down here at the return, just simply say we want to send the error, and the error will be error.state. So we will get this true or false value from here. Okay, so save it. Now let's check it in the browser. Here, if I type something wrong, you can see now there is a red background on our input. If I type correctly, there is no background red, but if I start typing something wrong, we will get this red background on this input. Okay, so this is what we were trying to do. Now we completely finished our marking logic. We are done with it now. Now we will work on this race on component, where we will add our timer, okay, when we start our race. Okay, so we will do that next. Here on this race on component, we want to make few changes. Okay, so return div, another div, paragraph tag with this text, and here another div, and here I want to create race timer component. Okay, now before I go and create this race timer component, let's style this component. So class name, I will say text to Excel flex and justify between, and over here class name text race. Okay, now we need to create this component. So open your Explorer and create a new file, race timer.tsx. Create a function race timer, and here a div. Let's save it, and let me import this here. Okay, now on this component we will create a timer. First we need to create a time state. So const time and set time equal to use state. The initial value will be 120, and this is the second. So basically it means we will have 120 seconds in our timer at the beginning. Okay, now import this use state. Now to run our timer, we will use effect hook, and here I get the code from the AI. Here I have to pass time as a dependency, and at the top here I want to say if time is less or equal to 0, then I want to return. Otherwise this code here will run every second. Okay, because of this, and we subtract 1 to this time every second. So after 120 seconds this time will be 0 and our timer will stop. And this code is here just for the cleanup. Okay, now we need to return this time, and we need to actually format it, because we are getting just the number as a time here, but we want to show the user a minute and a second like in a time format. Okay, so for that I will just remove this div, and here I will add a paragraph tag and format time and time. Now I have to create this function. I will do that here, const format time, and I will get the time like this, I will get the minute like this, I will get the second like this, and I want to return this string like this. Okay, and this is the way we will get our time formatted. Okay, now let me save it. This function here might be helpful in other places also, so let me just separate this. We will put it inside our util folder. Okay, so where is my util folder? It's right here. Now here I will create a new file, format time.ts. okay, and here I will just paste my code, and actually I have to export it. So let me just say export default. Okay, now let's save it. Now we can import this format time from that. So import format time from this util format time. Okay, now save it. And we have some error over here, and this error is because we use these brackets over here. Now let's save it again, and there is no error. Now let's go and check if this is working or not. Here you can see our timer is running, and let me make this timer little bit smaller number. So let me make it like 3 seconds. Okay, so that we can see it is timing out. Okay, so when it reaches to 0, it stopped. Okay, that is what we wanted. We are timeout, but we can still type in this input, but this should not be the case. Once we are timeout, our rest should be over. And the other thing is, before we start typing here, our timer is running, but we want that when we start typing here at first, then only our timer should start. Okay, so we have to consider few logic on this timer. So that is what we will do next. Here in this rest timer component, whenever this time is 0, we want the rest to be over. And if you go to check on this use typing store, you can see we already have this method here, rest over, which set the rest complete to true. Now we want to run this function rest over when this timer is 0. Okay, so here I will say when this time is 0, we want to use typing store. We want to get this state, and we want to run this rest over function here, and then we want to return. Okay, now let's save it. Now on this rest on component, we do not want to show the timer when the race is already complete, right? So here I want to put the logic over here, but first I need to get this const race complete, and from this use typing store we will get this state race complete. Okay, now if this race complete is false, then only we want to render that component. Okay, let's save it. Now let's check it in our browser. Now you can see if I start new race, we have this timer, and when we are timeout, our race is over. And if I say new race again, we have a timer there, and when timeout, race is over. Okay, this timer start as soon as the page load, but we want it to start only when we start typing for the race. So here we need some way to know the race has started. So in this use typing store, we will add a state that can provide us the race started information. Here, rather than adding some boolean value to track the race start, we will add a property race start at, and this will be null or a number. Now this way we can know the race is not started when the race started at value is null, and when we start the race we will set its value to current time, so that we will also get the information about at what time race is started, which will be very useful when we need to compute the result of the race. So we also need a method set race start at. Now we will say the initial value of this race start at is null, and we want to create this method set race start at, and it will set the race start at value to the current time. Okay, Now when we start the new race, we also want to reset it. Okay, so race start at will be null at that time, and go ahead and reset this mark value also. So that's all we need here. So let's save it. Now let's go to this race on component, and over here we will get this race start at from this use typing store state. Okay, then we will say over here, if this race start at is not equals to null, then only we want to render this timer. Okay, now let's save this too. Now open text input component, and here we will get that race start at from this use typing store. Okay, now we want to start our race and timer when we make the first change to this input, right? So for that, let me just cut this from here and replace this with start race or something, and we will create this function over here, and here we will say const start race. That's all right, and we need to set type over here. But before that, I want to check if this race start at is null, then I want to get this use typing store and this method from there and run it. Okay, so we just need to import this now. Import it. Now let's save it. I think that's all we need to do. Let's go and check if everything is working or not. So if I click this new race, then you can see there is no timer now. Now if I start typing, you can see the timer is there, right? Now if I press this button again, we have the new race, but the race has not started because we do not have a timer over here. Once I make any changes in this input, if I type something, the timer start, and when time is out, our race is over. Okay, that is what we wanted, right? Now the next thing is we want to work on this race track. Okay, so let's do it. Open this race track component, and here we will begin with adding some UI for this component. Okay, here I will add a component called car, and here I will add a component called current speed, and here I also need to add paragraph tag that will say done once the race is complete. And let me style this div a little bit. Here I can say class name, and let me add the style flex, justify between gap 5, text gray 600. This one will be class name flex 1, border bottom, border dashed, and border orange, let's say 300. This will be flex and justify at the end. Okay, now we need to style this div. Let's say class name with 16, string 0, text maybe end, and white space, no wrap, font semi bold and relative. okay, so that I can make this paragraph absolute position. So let's say class name position absolute, text access top 0, right 0, and negative translate on the y-axis full. Okay, I think that's all we need here. Now we will create this component car and this current speed. So open the Explorer and create a file called car.tsx. Here we will create a function car and return a div, and here I also need a paragraph tag, and this will say u. Okay, and I also need a image over here, and the path for this image will be car.png. And actually I already have this car.png in my public folder, so just add some car image, okay, for your project. Now I want to style this div a little bit, so class name, I will say here flex gap 1 will be fine, and padding bottom 2. I think that's all we need here, so let me save it. Now open your Explorer again and create a new file, current speed.tsx, and same thing, we will create a function here, current speed, and we will just return a paragraph tag. For now let's say 0 word per minute. Okay, let's save it. Now let's go back to this racetrack component. Now we need to import these two components here. Okay, import this current speed and import this car component. And one thing I want to do here is I want to conditionally render this done text, because I want it to be appear only when the race is completed. Okay, and we will get the race complete state from our store. So here const race complete, use typing store, from that state we will get race complete. We just need to import this now. Okay, import this. Now let's save it. Now let's check this in the browser. Okay, looks like I forget to add the size on this car image, so let me do that. Over here, go to this car component, and on this image just add a width of 60. Now save it and let's go back to the browser. Now you can see this is how it's supposed to look like. Okay, now if I start a race, the timer when it's up, we will get the done sign when the race is over. Okay, now we need to do two things. First, we need to animate this car as our race progress, and we need to show the current typing speed. So let's go to this use typing store. Here we will add a property complete percentage, and this will be number type, and this will track our typing progress in percentage, on the basis of which we will animate car position. Now we also need a property current speed, and this will be string type. Now we need a method to set the value of this complete percentage and this current speed. Okay, but this set complete percentage will take a parameter percent, and this will be number type. Now over here we will say the initial value of this complete percent is 0, and the current speed is 0 word per minute. Okay, now we need to define that method we just created. Here we will say set complete percentage, and we will get a parameter percent and set its value to this complete percentage. Okay, simple. And here we will say set current speed, and this will be a function. This function will set the current typing speed, and typing speed is just the ratio of words per minutes. So we need the total word we typed so far and the duration of typing in minutes. To get the duration, we need to know when the race was started, and we can get this information from our state race started at. So let me remove this, and here I will say const start time equals to get, and from this we can get this race started at. To use this get, first we need to add this over here. Okay, so when we pass this get over here, then we will have no more error over here. Okay, this start time can sometime be null, so before we start doing some calculation, we will check for this null, and if it's null, just return it. Now we can say const minutes equals to, and this code, so we are getting the duration of our typing in millisecond, and once we get that, we divided it by 1000, so we get the value in second, and when we again divided it by 60, we get the value in minutes. Okay, now we can just say const words and get it from mark correctly typed. Okay, so this gives us the total characters we have typed correctly. Okay, now if we divided it by 5, then we will get the number of the words where each word has 5 characters. Okay, simple. Now we can say const speed is word per minute, but we just want to round it so that we do not get value in decimal. Okay, now here we just set the current speed value to this speed and word per minute. Okay, now just simply save it. Now open a file of our hook, use typing input. Here we want to update our current speed and complete percentage. Every time we increase the index, after we press this space and change the word, we type the previous word correctly and move to the next word in this code, right? So here we want to update our current speed. So let's say use typing store, and from this we will get the state and run this set current speed method. Similarly, use typing store dot get state and then set complete percentage, but here as a parameter we have to provide a percent, and one way of getting it is from this index, and we will divide it by total words and multiply by 100. Now this is working because this index represents the number of the word we typed. Okay, but one thing is, this index we are getting here is the previous value, because here we want to update the index, but before this index is updated, this line of code will run. Okay, so the one way of handling it is just adding 1 directly to it, and we know by this point we need to update this index, right? So this code will just work fine. And here when this code run at the end, when before this race is over, I want to run these 2 line of code again. Okay, so let me copy that from there, and over here I will just paste it, and by this time we know the race is complete, so just set this complete percentage to 100. Now let's save it. Here we set this value, but when the race is over and we want to start a new race, we want to reset this value, right? So for that, let's go back to the store, and here, right here, when we start a new race, we want to reset this complete percentage to 0 and current speed to 0 word per minute. Okay, now save it and let's go back to this use typing input. Actually, I'm done with working on this hook, but while I was working here in this file, I noticed one thing, that we are getting this text as a prop, but I'm using this text only one place here in this use memo. Okay, and I think we can remove this use memo if we do something like, let's say for this text, we will directly put these words over here, and now we will get the word, and here I will just change these words, and these words now will be string array. Okay, now here I can just remove all of this code, and here I can say const total words, okay, equals to words dot length. Okay, now I need to remove this use memo because I am getting some error here, and now let me save this. Now we need to update this file where we are using this hook. So we are using this hook in this text input component, and here rather than passing this text, now what I will do is I will say words, and these words will have this text dot split. Now this doesn't change anything, but we remove this use memo from our code, and I think this way is the better way of doing it. Now open this current speed component, and over here we need to get this current speed state from this use typing store. Okay, now just import this use typing store, and then we will replace this hard-coded 0 word per minute value from here and replace with this current speed. Okay, now let's save it. Now let's go to this timer and let's change this 3 second to 10 second so that we will get longer time to type. Okay, now let's save it. Now let's go to the browser to test it. So here, if I start typing, this value will be updated. So keep an eye on this. Okay. So you can see when I type, this value get updated. But if you notice, if I do not type for a long time also, this value stays same. Okay. But I want, if I stay and do not type, I want in like 4-5 seconds this value to be updated again. Okay, so we will do that next. So let's go to the VS Code. Back to this rest timer component here where we have this interval code. I will add a if statement over here. If the remainder of the time divided by 5 is equals to 0, then I want to run a function that we have in this use typing store. I will get the state from it and then run this method set current speed. Okay, now let's save it. While I'm here, let me also change this 10 to, let's make it a minute, so make it 60. So save it. Okay, now let's check this in the browser. So if I start new race, I type a word and I wait for some time, you can see it is auto updating in like 5 seconds. Okay, so this is what we wanted. Now at this car component, we will add an animation to this car. Now this car will be translate in x-axis from the beginning to the end of the track depending upon the progress of our typing. Initially, I position this car at the end of this track because this way it is a lot easier to align this car start with this track end. I was thinking of using framer motion to animate this car, but I found the better and easier way to do it without using any library. So I will show you that here. So let's do it. First, we will get the state complete percentage from this use typing store. Now we need to import this, and let me show you how our animation will work first. And here in style, I will add a property transform, and here I will add a value translate in the x position by negative 520 px. Okay, now if I save it, you can see in the browser our car now appears in the front, okay, in the beginning of this track. Okay, now the idea is we change this 520 value depending on this complete percentage. Okay, so the complete percentage, if it is 0, then we want this minus 520 px value, and if the complete percentage is 100, then we want it to be 0. Okay, now to do that, we can wrap this on the curly brackets with this dollar sign. Now I can add some logic over here. So if the complete percentage times 520 and to this value, if I subtract minus 520, then we will get our x position. Okay, so how this working is, when this complete percentage is 0, then this value will be 0, and when we subtract 520, then the value will be negative 520. Okay, so that is what we wanted at the beginning. Okay, now the complete portion is if 100, then this value will be positive 520, and minus this 520 makes it 0. So at the end, this x value will be 0. Okay, very simple math. Just look into it for a minute, you will get it. Okay, let's save it. Now let's check this in the browser. So if I start typing, you can see our car is updating its position. Okay, so by the time we finish our race, it comes to this end of this track. Okay, let's see that again. Open this typing area component. Now here we will add that arrow kind of button to guide our user that this is the text that we need to type and this is where we need to type. Okay, so let's open the Explorer and create a new component. Let's say arrow button.tsx. Okay, now here create that arrow button function and pass here div, another div here, and I want to pass children here. Okay, and I will get these children from the props, and let me say this is a arrow button props. Okay, and here I need to create a type for this prop. Now we can style this little bit. So here I will say class name relative overflow y clip and with 28 flex justify int. Okay, and over here class name padding x of 2, height 8, background green 500, grid place item center, after that rounded L medium and text white and text SM. Okay, now I need a arrowhead. For that I will create here another div that will be self-closing. Okay, and here I will say class name, this will be absolute position, top 0, right 0, translate x full, bg green 500, jet index -10, width 6, height 14, and rotate 45. Origin bottom right and rounded dash top right. Yes, sir. Okay, now save it. Now I will wrap all of these within another div. Okay, and here I will say class name will be class name. Okay, and I will get this class name from the prop class name, and here I have to define that class name, and this class name will be string. Okay, now let's save it. This is a simple UI component, so you can build this with your own way and style. As it is not directly related to the typing logic, I did not explain it in detail. But if you need to know, here is how I implemented it. If still something is unclear, leave your question in a comment and I will be happy to answer them. Now let's go to this typing area component. Here in this div and also on this div, we will add a class name relative. Okay, after that over here and over here, right, in both of it I want this arrow button we just created. Okay, now we will style it class name absolute top 0 left -40, and I think that's all I need. So here I will close it, and in the top one I will just say type this, and over here on this one let me say here, save it, and let's check this in the browser. Now here you can see we have these two buttons, type this and here. Okay, now we have to animate this button. Okay, let's do that next. To create the animation for this arrow button, we will go to this tailwind.config.js file, and here we already have this cursor keyframes. We will just copy this and paste it over here. Now simply change this cursor name to scaling, and here for its value we will just change it to transform scale 1. Okay, and to this value we will change it to transform scale 1.1. Okay, now similarly we will create this animation over here, change the name scaling. Okay, now let's save it. Now let's go back to this typing area component, and over here for this arrow button we will add this animate scaling class. Okay, now save it and let's go to the browser to check it. So you can see here this button has now animation. Okay, these two buttons will be here until we complete our typing, but what I want is if we type like couple of words here, we want this button to disappear. Okay, so we will do that next. We can also create a new state in our Zustand store to show or hide this button. If you want to do that, please do that. But in this video, to make it simple, I will use the state that we already have. So here I will say const correctly typed equals to use typing store. From this use typing store I will get the state, and from the state I can get a mark, and from this mark we can get correctly typed. Okay, and let me close it. Now we need to actually import this use typing store. Okay, now we can say here if correctly typed is greater than 11, that means if we type 10 character correctly, after that we do not want to show this button, so return null. Okay, and if this is not the case we will return this UI. Okay, this one. So we can now save it and let's go to the browser to check it. So here right now we have this button. So if I type like 10 character, so you can see we have no more this button. Okay, now we are almost done with our project. Now the main thing we need to do here is we need to show the result once we finish our typing. When we got to this point, we want to see what time it took us to finish the race, what is our typing speed, and all sort of that result. Okay, so we will do that next. Before we continue, I want to let you know that when I was typing this word, a line of code here at the top was added automatically, and I'm not sure if you can see this line of code being added in a video. Anyway, if you don't have this line of code, that's great, just continue. But if you have something like this, just remove the line of code here and save the file. Now we will add a functionality to show the result in our app. So open this use typing store, and here we will add a new state result that will be type result. Okay, and this result will hold all the information that we required to show our result. Now we need to create this result type. So here we will say type result, and this result will have a state completed or timeout or error. Okay, so when we complete our race, then we will get this result state completed. If the race is over due to this timeout, the result state will be timeout, and if we have any error during the calculation of the result, then we will have a state error. Okay, when the result state is timeout or error, we only need to show the message that time is out or there is an error, right? But when the result state is completed, then we need other information such as speed, accuracy, time, right? So here I will add another property, message, that will be string type, and I will separate this complete state from here, and I will say that the result will be this type or full result. Okay, now we need to create this type full result over here. We will say type full result, and this full result type will have state completed. Okay, now this state will also have the information about speed. So speed will be string, accuracy, and this will be also string, that's fine, and time will be number, and maybe we need mistake words, right? And this will be string array type, but to track this mistake words, actually we need to add another state over here. So over here I will add a state mistake words, and this will be string array type, and here I will say this will be type of typing store mistake words. So in case any time we change this type of mistake word in the future, this will be automatically changed. Okay, so we do not have to remember here to change it, because this will be the same as this. Okay, we will pass this value over here. All right, so now our result will be this type. Okay, either we will have the complete state of result that will give us the information about speed, accuracy, time, and all that, and if we have the state timeout or error, then we will get only the message. Okay, now let's save it. Now over here, the initial value for this mistake word will be empty array, and for result it will be state error and message will be this something went wrong, and please type again, and don't forget this comma at the end. Now save it. Here we set up the initial value of our state, right? And when we want to start a new race, we want to reset our state to its initial value, right? In our current setup, if I add a new state or change its value, I must remember to update the code here, and I have to repeat the same line of code in two places, which is not a good coding practice. Rather than doing this way, I will just remove all of this code from here. Okay, and here at the top I will create a object const initial state, and here I will grab all of this code from here and cut it and paste it over here in this object. Okay, now I can use this initial state object over here and spread this initial state, and I'm getting error. This is because this result should be type result, but right now it's not a type result, right? So here at the end just say as result. Now this result will be type result, and we have no more error over here. Similarly here, when we start the new race, we want to set this to our initial state. Here we spread this initial state again, something like this, and save it. Doing this way, it helps us to remove the duplicate codes from our project and makes our code more readable, and this is a good practice to follow. Okay, now here in this typing store, we will add a new method, get result, and this will return result. And as a parameter over here, we will pass result state, that will be type result state. Now this result state can either be complete or timeout. So if we want the result for our timeout, then we will pass timeout, and if we want the full result, we will pass this complete. Okay, now let's go over here and create this function. So here we will create that function. Let me just make some room. So get result, and to get a full result we need two information. So the first one is the race start at, and this we already have in our state, race start at, and we also need to know when the race is ended. So race end at, and this will be date.now. So that means whenever this get result function is called, that time we will assume this race is over. Okay, now here we need to check few conditions. So if the result state is timeout, then we will return the result with the message timeout. Okay, and if this result state is error, then we want to return the message error. But I already have this error message in our initial state, so I will just return this one. And in this condition, I want to add this race start at. If it is null, then we also want to return this error message, right? Because this race start at can also be sometime null. Okay, here. Now after that we can return the full result, but we need to know here the second, and this we will get by saying race end at minus race start at divided by 1000. Okay, and here we need to know the words we have typed. So let me say this get dot text. So we will get the text, and we will take the length of it and divide by 5. So this gives us the total characters in this text, and when we divide it by 5, we will get the number of the words that has 5 characters in each word. Okay, now the speed is just the word per minute, right? So here divided by 60 makes this second a minute, and word is divided by this one. So we will get the speed, we just rounded it. Okay, so that we do not get any decimal value over here. Now other thing we need here is this accuracy. So here we can say const accuracy, and this will be equals to, first we need to know the percentage of the mistake we did. So here we have mistake words, we will count the length, so we will get the total number of the mistake words. Okay, and on total words times 100. Okay, so this gives us the percentage of the total mistake we have done. Okay, and if we subtract this value to this 100%, then we will get the our accuracy, right? So first this need to be calculated, after that we need to calculate this one, right? And we subtract this to 100%. This gives us the accuracy, right? Now we can return our result with state complete speed. We get this from here. Accuracy to fix makes it two decimal points, so we get this accuracy, we get the time, and we get this mistake words from this mistake word state. Okay, now we can save it. Now where do we want to call this function? So if we think logically, we want to get the result every time our race is over, right? So here we will also set the result. Okay, we will get this method here and call this function result, and here we need to pass this result state. So the result state, where we can get it from. So let's say just state here, and we can get this result state from this race over. Okay, and now we need to update this race over method over here in our type. So here we do not have a parameter for this race over, but we want to get the same thing here that we have in this get result. We will just paste it over here in this race over. Okay, now let's save it. Now wherever we use this race over function, we need to update it by adding this parameter. Okay, so let's find where we use this race over function. Okay, so looks like I have used this race over function in this race timer. So let me open this one, and here you can see I'm using this race over. Now when this time is up, that means our time is out. So let me just pass this time out over here. Now the other place we have used is over here, but first let me just save this, and we will update this one on this use typing input. Okay, so I'm using this over here, and this is when our race is complete, right? And here I will just say completed. Okay, now save it again. So that is that. I think that's the only two places we have used this race over function. So I can go back to my store. Where is my store? Let me just open that again. Use typing store. Okay, now we need to add a method to update this mistake word. So here update mistake word, and this function will take this word as a parameter, and its type will be string. Now similarly we did before, we will just move to the bottom of this code over here, and then we will create that function. So update mistake word, and AI has given me this correct code, so let me just use that. And this function will take this word as a parameter, and it will set the new value of this mistake word. It will take this previous mistake word and spread in this array, and just add this new word that we provided from this parameter over here, and the new value of this mistake word will be this array. Okay, so in simple language, we just added this new word to this previous mistake word array. Okay, now let's save it. Now whenever we type our word incorrectly, we want to call this function. So we will go to this use typing input hook, where we have this condition that check if we type a character correctly or not. So if we type a character incorrectly, that means the current word that we are typing is that word that we type incorrectly. Okay, so here we want to say use typing store dot get state, and we want to call that function update mistake word, and here we will pass this current word as a parameter. Okay, now save it. Now the only thing we need to do is to update this result UI. Okay, that is the next we will do. First, this result component need a result state. So here I will say const result, and we will get our result from this use typing store state result. Okay, now below this button I want to add a div tag and s3 tag in it, and our title will say result, and here let me style this div container. This will say background result, padding of 6, and rounded emd text gray, 200. Okay, now let me style this. Yes, 3 tag. So class name, and here text to Excel, font bold, and then padding bottom of 3, margin bottom of 3, border bottom, and border color will be gray 500. Okay, now before we move on over here, we want to add a space between this button and this div. So here I will say class name space y4. Okay, now below this s3 tag, okay, I want to add a condition. If this result dot state is not equals to completed, then we just want to return a paragraph tag with this result dot message. So you can see here, when this result dot state is not completed, then we will have this message, right? And we just want to print it over here like so. But if we have the complete result, then we want to return a new component that we will create, show result. And here this component also need access to this result. So I will say result prop will also get this result. Okay, now if I hover here, you can see this result is now full result type, as the result dot state is right now the completed. Okay, now we need to create this show result component, and that we will do right here. Okay, at the bottom here I will create that show result as an arrow function, and here return div. This component also need a prop result, and this result will be type full result. But we do not have full result type over here in this file, so we just need to import it from this use typing store. So we have it here. We have to first export this type. Now save it, and now we can import this full result type from this use typing store. Okay, now let's deconstruct this result here, and we will get this speed, accuracy, time, and mistake words from this result. Okay, now here we will style this div container. This will be flex gap of 10, and then items start. Okay, now within this div container, actually I need 2 div with a class name of flex 1. Okay, here I will add a p tag like 6 times. Okay, before that I want to add few more class to this div. I will say grid equals 2 and gap of 4. That's fine. And here on this p tag we will say u speed. Okay, let me make this your speed, and here we will pass this speed. Now here we will say accuracy, and then over here on this p tag we will pass this accuracy. Okay, and over here we want to get time, and let me do like this. Okay, and over here we will just pass this time. Okay, but we need to format this time also. But we also created, I think, utility function format time over here, and we have to wrap this time. Okay, so we are getting this time as a number. Now formatting it will convert it in the format of the time. Okay, now here on this div we want one h5 tag. Okay, and this will say mistake words. Okay, and let me style this h5 tag. So class name underline font semi bold text XL margin bottom of 2. I think that's all we need for this h5 tag. And over here below this h5 tag we will add another div. Okay, and let me style this div quickly. Class name, here I will say grid call 2 and gap of 1, and then items start. Okay, and inside this div we want to add this map function to this mistake word array and return this paragraph tag. And this AI is giving me correct code, so let me just accept it. And here I will make few changes. I will add this word here, so I will always get the unique key. And here I will make this text rate 500 to text rate 300, and I want to add text large class to this. Okay, now everything look all right. Let me save it. Now time to test our app, and we will see if our show result functionality is working or not. Okay, so here I will do some mistake. Okay, and here I correct it. Now it show we mistake on the limit word. That's correct. It's showing our speed. That's right. It's showing our accuracy. Something is mess up in our time, so we will check on this one. Looks like we have to correct this one. Other thing is working as we want, right? Open this format time.ts file, and to this second value just wrap this with this math.floor method. Okay, now this will fix the issue that we are having. So let's save it. So you can see now time is formatted correctly over here, right? Now the other thing that I want to do is to check if this timer is working or not. Okay, so when the timer run out, we get this timeout message. So this is also working, right? Now I will get the full text. Okay, and we will test this again. Here in this use typing store, we got this text by using this get text function. So let's open this get text function, and here you can see we are using this part of the code over here that we added here just to make our text little bit smaller, so that during the testing we do not have to type much, right? So let's just remove this and save this file. Now before we go back to the browser, I want to make another change in our app. So let's go to this race timer component over here. Here we have this hard-coded value for the time, but here I want to set the different time for each race that will be calculated based on the minimum typing speed to complete the race. For example, let's say we want the minimum typing speed to be 20 word per minute. Okay, so the time it takes to type the current text with the speed of this 20 word per minute is the time we want to set here. Okay, so for doing this, we need a text state here that we can get from this use typing store. Okay, now here I can say text dot length divided by 5, and this will give us the total word in the text. Okay, now I will divide this by our minimum typing speed, and this will give us the time in minute, but here we need a time in second, so just multiply by 60. Okay, now save it. Now let's go to the browser to test this app. Now here you can see the full text, and if I start a race here, the timer is 1 minute and 45 seconds for this race. And if I start a new race, okay, and here you can see right now the timer is 1:38, right? So we will have the different time for the different race. Okay, that is what we wanted. Now only thing here that I want to do is, right now we can select this text and also copy it, right? But we do not want to have this feature in our app. So let me quickly update our code. Here in this text to be type component, we have our text inside this paragraph tag. So here in this p tag, I want to set the style user select none. Okay, now save it. Now let's go to the browser, and now if you try also, you cannot select any text inside this paragraph tag. Okay, that is what we wanted. This complete our project. Before I stop recording, I just want to let you know that I built this app 2 times. First when I was planning to create this video, and second time when I was making this video. Even the app functionality and the UI was same. Both project code are completely different from each other. The reason I am saying this is, if you really want to get something out of this video, don't just copy the code I am writing, but also try to understand the logic that I am explaining. I might have some bug in my code. Some of my code might not be written efficiently. Some of the logic might need improvement. Okay, so try to find them and update the code with your own logic. That is how you will learn. If you have some question, just leave them in a comment. I will be happy to help you. For now, that's all from me. Thank you. See you in the next video.